Hi, welcome to Web AppBuilder for ArcGIS Customizing and Extending. My name is Gavin Raykemper, and today with David Martinez, we'll be talking about how to customize and extend Web AppBuilder with widgets and themes. First, we'll do an introduction, talk a little bit about Web AppBuilder. Then we'll jump into creating a widget. We'll go through an example, a demo of actually building a real widget. Then we'll go through themes, what they are, and kind of some ideas on how to create themes. And finally, we'll talk about the Web AppBuilder community and where you can get more information. The idea of Web AppBuilder is that you take a GUI builder and combine widgets and themes. There are many out of the box, but you could create your own custom ones as well, and combine those with the STEM app, which is the core application that is provided with Web AppBuilder. And you combine them all with a configuration file, which wraps them in a STEM app, and gives you a really simple way to build an app that's really easy to generate. Web AppBuilder has been really popular. There are over 525,000 apps created in ArcGIS Online, and about a third of those are public. Web AppBuilder Developer Edition is the version that allows you to run Web AppBuilder on your local computer or server. This allows you to develop custom widgets and themes for Web AppBuilder. The main place in Web AppBuilder to customize and extend are the widgets and themes. Widgets are executed at runtime. They should be self-sufficient, so you could take your widget and send it to a friend or colleague, and they could run the widget in their own Web AppBuilder. It needs a container, and it uses the framework of the container, where the theme is applied at runtime and is also self-sufficient and distributable. But a theme has no container per se. It kind of is the container for all the widgets that you'll add to the app. So jumping into widgets specifically, creating a custom widget uses the same skills that you already have from building JavaScript apps. So on the right here is an example of a custom app you might have right now. You have some CSS, some JavaScript, and some HTML markup. Well, those three concepts are directly present in our concept of Web AppBuilder widgets, but they're in separate CSS, JS, and HTML files. With Web AppBuilder widgets, you'll be creating Dojo modules that inherit from base widget, which is provided in the Jimu library of Web AppBuilder. This is similar to how in plain Dojo apps we inherit from Dijit.widgetBase, which provides us the Dijit lifecycle methods like post create and startup. Base widget will provide us some Web AppBuilder specific lifecycle functions that we can use like onOpen, onClose, etc. Base widget, in addition to the lifecycle functions, gives you app properties, the app's config through this.config, access to the map object via this.map, state events, etc. So you have access to a lot of stuff. Your job as the developer is to build all these events and things together with a UI, with your business logic and workflows, and maybe defining out the widget settings, and of course making sure any of your UI is properly translated through localization if you need that. The structure of Web AppBuilder is quite opinionated, which is another way of saying that Web AppBuilder widgets expect certain files to be in certain places. This saves you from wasting time having to set up complex configuration files. All widgets must have a manifest.json file, which tells Web AppBuilder about your widget. It also must have a widget.js file, which is the main entry point that Web AppBuilder will use to call your widget. Everything else here is optional. Widget.html is your HTML template, config.json is the settings of your widget, and then there are folders for NLS, your translations, CSS, images, and the setting folder is special. It's where you can define out the logic and template for your widget settings modal. Now that I've told you about widget development, let's create a widget. So today we'll be creating a widget that clips and summarizes a soil layer based on a polygon that the user draws on the map. We can start our widget using a variety of methods, either creating the files from scratch, starting by copying an existing widget, or even using a widget generator, which simplifies the process of creating a blank widget for you. If you're a bit more advanced and want to learn more about the generator script that will help you set up developer workflows, just search on GitHub for ArcGIS Web AppBuilder widget generator. For this session, we'll start with using an existing widget. Web AppBuilder comes with a variety of sample widgets. Here I've got Web AppBuilder extracted. And if you go to the client folder, STEM app, And then widgets. Here are a variety of all the out-of-the-box widgets. And if you scroll down to sample widgets, here are a bunch of example widgets that you can learn from. There's a widget that has all the bells and whistles in the demo folder. There's a widget that shows jQuery. There's a widget that shows widget communication. I would recommend taking a look at all these samples because they really tell you a lot about different types of widgets. Today we'll start with the simple widget. So first I'm going to just make a copy of that and name the folder the widget name that I want it to be. So today we're going to call it clip summarize. Now one other thing we want to make sure before we start using this widget is that we want the name in the manifest.json to match the folder name that I just created. So I'm going to go into this folder, open the manifest.json file, and make sure that name is the exact same, including capitalization. So now that I've made that, I can enable my widget. To enable the widgets, it's as simple as moving this widget up into the main widgets folder. And once you do that, it'll immediately be available in Web AppBuilder. So let's take a look there. I have Web AppBuilder Developer Edition running and a basic 2D web application going here. So if I go into widgets and select widget, I can now see our clip summarize widget shown up. It has no configuration since it's just a simple widget. And I can open it up and there it says I'm a very simple widget. Now there are a couple ways to develop the new widget that we just created. The simplest way is to load the widget into the Web App Viewer, where we send a config file path as the query parameter, and so that's what we'll do today. So first I'll copy a config file from the sample configs to the configs folder. So going back to the Web App Builder directory, I'll go to the client folder this time, go to stem app, and I'll just copy this config demo from the sample configs folder up and over into the configs folder. I'm going to rename this just config.json to make things easier. And then we'll want to load this config file in an app. To do that, we'll take the basic Web App Builder URL, paste it into a new tab, change this from Web App Builder to Web App Viewer, and then say config equals configs/config.json. That's the path that our config is living at within the folder. This is now going to load Web App Builder based on the contents of that config file. So you can see it's loading a example web map and loading a bunch of sample widgets. We want to change that config file so it loads the web map that we want as well as our widget that we're developing. To do that, I'll just double click on the config.json to edit it. I'm going to find first the web map, that's the item ID, and I'm going to paste in the web map ID that I know I want to use. Next, I will change the portal URL. And the app ID to make sure that we can log in properly. We'll clear out a few things that we don't need, like the subtitle and these links. And finally, we'll scroll all the way to the bottom where we have those 5 widgets that were showing up at the top right. There's one object here for each of those 5 widgets. I'm going to remove the last 4, and this one we will call clip summarize, the widget that we're creating. And then we need to reference the path in the folder directory of where that widget sits. So if I save that and switch back to my app, I'll refresh, and now we can see it's loading our web map and it's loading our widget. Let's make sure when we make a change to this widget that's actually being changed in the web app. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and open my widget directory in my code editor. So to do that, I'll go to the widgets directory and drag in the clip summarize folder into my code editor. That'll open up all the files on the left-hand side, and it'll allow me to easily edit that going forward. So right now it says in the widget this is a very simple widget. Let's just make a very small change here. Put a few exclamation points. When we save it and refresh, we should be able to see that change live. And if we do, that means we're ready to start developing. So the first thing we might want to do for our custom widget is add a proper icon. I've got an icon here, and so I'm going to go into my widget directory, go into the images folder, and just overwrite the icon.png. Now when I refresh the page, we've got a nice customized icon here. The next thing we'll want to do is start working with our code and move our HTML into its own HTML file. So right now that string of text is right in line in our widget.js, but we can tell Web AppBuilder to load this instead from widget.html. To do that, we have to tell Web AppBuilder that we have a widget.html. We go to the manifest.json file and go to the hasUI file setting, set that to true. Because that's set to true, Web AppBuilder will automatically look for a file called widget.html. So I'll create that file and move the HTML into that new HTML file and get rid of the old template string. With that all set up, we'll just refresh our page, make sure the widget is still working. Great. So now our HTML is coming from that file. Next, we want to add translations to our widget. You might say, hey, my widget, I don't need translations. I'm only building it for one language. Well, translations is good to set up in your widget early on because you might translate it in the future, but also it provides you a single place to put all your strings that you're using in your widget, so it's easy to maintain going forward. So it's really important to have this in place. Similar to before, we'll go to our manifest.json file and tell Web AppBuilder that we want to use translations. That's the has locale setting. We'll set to true. Because we have that has locale set to true, Web AppBuilder will look for a folder called NLS. So I'll create that folder. And within that NLS folder, it'll look for a file called strings.js. So I'll create that. Now this strings.js needs to be in our particular format. I might not have that memorized. You might not have that format memorized. So this allows me to gives me a chance to point out the Web AppBuilder Developer Edition documentation. That's over at developers.arcgis.com/webappbuilder. And if I go into the guide and widget development, you'll see a lot of great topics for developing your custom widget, including add I18N support. It talks about everything about supporting translations, and it gives you a sample structure of this file. So I'll just copy and paste that over to here. Our string we're going to call description for now, and then the text of that description is going to be, please start here. We're going to support Spanish, so that's going to be the ES locale. And we'll set that to true. Because we're supporting Spanish, Web AppBuilder is automatically going to look for, within the NLS folder, another folder called that same locale string, in this case ES, with another file, strings.js. This strings.js is going to be similar to the other one, except it's only going to have a list of the strings that we're supporting for this particular language. And so here in the strings.js, within the ES folder is where we want to put our Spanish translation of that string. I have a translation here that I can paste in. One additional change we need to make is to actually use this as description within our widget.html, so that Web AppBuilder will know, depending on the language, it should either use the default language or one of the translated languages. So we'll go to our widget.html and just replace our string with $nls.description. Now to actually test out these changes, we can go over to the web app and add a query string parameter to our URL. So we're going to add &locale equals ES. Web AppBuilder will load the Spanish locale. All the out-of-the-box widgets are already translated, as you can see there. And when I open my widget, we can see Web AppBuilder is automatically swapping out that string to be the Spanish version in this case. So our translations are properly working. Let's switch back to the non-translated version by removing that query URL parameter and make sure it's also loading our default language. Looks great. Next, we want to enable our CSS file. CSS allows us to style our widget properly and specifically with CSS rules. So switching back to our code, I'll go to our widget.js file first. I'm going to remove this extra function that we don't need, and I'm going to create a base class here. Base class is what Web AppBuilder will automatically add this class, this HTML class, to wrap our widget so that we can use this base class in our CSS. So that's an important step in enabling our CSS. We'll then go to our manifest.json and tell Web AppBuilder that we have a style. And when we do that, Web AppBuilder is automatically going to look for a file called style.css in a folder called CSS. So I'll create that file right now. Now I want to target my CSS rule here that I'm going to create specifically to my description line. So really quick, I'm going to go over to my widget.html and wrap my description in a div where the class equals description. Now I can actually use this class in my CSS. So we'll say, we'll create a rule that is using our base class that we started with, and then more specifically to our description, and we'll make it both bold and green. So now reviewing our changes. Our text is now bold and green. So that gives us a CSS file and structure that we can utilize while we're building our widget. So one great thing about developing with Web AppBuilder is that since it's built out on the ArcGIS API for JavaScript, you can utilize the widgets that are available in that API. For example, the ArcGIS API for JavaScript has a draw widget that you can use right out of the box. It allows you to write minimal code and lets the user on the map draw, and you as the developer get the geometry and you can do what you need to with it. So we want to utilize that functionality within our Web AppBuilder app. So let's start by adding the draw widget to our widget. In our HTML file, we'll want to put in a place where the draw widget is going to live. So we'll add that. We're adding a div and then a button that we're saying when this button is clicked, call a draw click handler. And the text of that button is going to be start draw. So let's make sure we put this variable into our strings.js. And so that's taken care of. Now we want to create this function in our widget.js. So when I click this button, we're going to log out start draw, and then we're going to enable the draw toolbar. We actually need to create an instance of a draw toolbar. So to do that, we're going to utilize a lifecycle function of Web AppBuilder, the postCreate function. So the postCreate function will get automatically called when our widget is created. So here we're going to utilize the draw toolbar from the JavaScript API. In order to do that, we need to include it using the AMD includes. So I've looked up in the documentation. The draw toolbar is at that location. So now we can use this draw module here. We're using this .map, which Web AppBuilder automatically provides. And we're also setting up a event on the draw toolbar so that when the person ends the draw, it'll call our draw end handler. So let's create that here. So here's our draw end handler. With that all in place, let's go check out and when we open our widget, we see our Start Draw button. I can click on it, draw on the map, and if I check out our console, we can see that draw end event happened and is passing the year's geometry. So that gives us a great step forward in terms of the functionality of our application. So now we actually want to do something with that drawn polygon. We want to query the feature layer, clip the results using the client-side geometry engine, and then display the results in a new graphics layer. To fit this all in during the talk, I have a few utility functions that are already written that will include those modules at the top of our widget along with the graphics layer. So opening our code, we'll go into our widget.js. And include the graphics layer and the geometry utils and display utils. Again, these two files that we're including are my utility files that you don't have to worry too much about. Just understand that the display utils are about displaying in the table, and the geometry utils are around that clipping of that data. So we want to create a location to store the results table in our HTML. So we'll create a div here, and we'll name it results div that we can then reference from our JavaScript. We then need to create that graphics layer. So we'll do that in the post create. This is a graphics layer that we will put the result geometries into, and then we'll add that to the map. We also want to get a reference to the feature layer of the soils that are currently in the map. So to do that, we're going to use this .map, which again is provided by Web AppBuilder for us. That's a reference to the JavaScript API map object. We're going to call the getLayer function on it, and we're going to just grab the first graphics layer ID. So then we can use this .feature layer later in our code. Next, we'll update what's going to happen when the person finishes drawing, and we'll have a show results function. So talking through this, the draw end handler now not only deactivates the draw toolbar, but actually uses our geometry utils utility function to query and clip based on the geometry that's coming in and the feature layer of the soils. That's going to give us back a layer of graphics that we will then call our show results function to show those both on the map and in a table. The show results function takes the geometry and all the graphics and calls our display utils to display those in a table and places that table into the results div that you'll remember we created earlier. So with all this in place, if we go back to our app, I can open our widget, make a quick drawing, and we'll see that our draw end happened, the dissolve and clip happened, and we can see that in the graphics layer on the map. We can also see the results in the table over here. Now this table isn't yet styled, so let's add some styles to make that look better. We'll go over to our style.css that we created earlier. And we'll just add some styles to make the swatch a little larger, column width, etc. Now when we make that drawing, our table looks a lot better. This is summarizing each type of soil and the number of acres that is in that selection for that soil type. You might have configuration variables in your widget that you want the user to control when they add their widget to their app. For our app, maybe we want them to enable or disable the showing of that results table that we were just looking at. To do this, first we tell Web AppBuilder that we have a config file and that it should look for the config file when the widget opens. We do that in the same way that we've done it before. We'll open our manifest.json file. We'll tell Web AppBuilder this has config is equal to true. Now Web AppBuilder is automatically going to look for a file called config.json. And in that config.json, we'll create a JavaScript object with a single property called showTable, and for now we'll set it to true. We need to add some logic to our JavaScript file that will actually look at this config variable and show or hide the table based on that. We'll put that in our JavaScript right here. We'll say if we have a config file and we have the showTable in the config file and it's equal to true, only in that case will we actually show our table. So to test this out, let's go to the config.json, set it to false, and switch over to our widget. When we do a drawing, the table's not showing. So we will now make this config file editable via a new UI using the settings page feature of Web AppBuilder. Let's look at the settings panel right now. If we go into the builder interface of Web AppBuilder, and I'll make sure to reload the page to get our latest changes. If we add our widget to the app, you'll see that the settings panel by default is just showing the config file that we had before, which is very ugly, and we want to add in a nice UI onto it. So to do that, we'll first go to our manifest.json, tell Web AppBuilder that we do have a settings page. When we do that, Web AppBuilder is automatically going to look into a folder called setting. And it's going to look for a variety of files called setting.js, setting.html, strings.js, and style.css. The setting.js is almost a mini widget in itself. So you can see we're extending from base widget setting in the GMU library of Web AppBuilder. And the key part is extending these two functions, setConfig and getConfig. SetConfig is what gets called when the setting widget opens. It passes the config file to you as the developer, and then you need to fill in the UI elements based on the config file. So in this case, we're checking if our show table variable is true or false, and then we're setting a checkbox to be true or false if that's based on that value. GetConfig is what Web AppBuilder calls when the person clicks save. It needs to turn all of your UI back into a JSON object and return that. So in our case, we're just returning show table is equal to the value of our checkbox. We need to actually create that checkbox over in the HTML file. So here we've got a label, and then we're creating an input checkbox, and we're giving it a name called show table checkbox, which is what we're using over here when we're referring to that DOM node in the JavaScript file. We also need to make sure we're using translations properly. So here, show table, similar to our main widget, we'll open our strings.js, define show table to be an actual string. So now when we switch back to our Web AppBuilder builder interface, we'll add the widget to our app. And now we have a setting, show table, that's a checkbox, true or false. So if I turn that on, do a quick drawing, we'll see the table shows up. If I turn it off, I do a quick drawing, see the table doesn't show up. That's a nice user interface for your widget users. So now that we've written our custom widget, we've used the ArcGIS API for JavaScript, we've built a UI, we've built the settings panel, now we need a nice look and feel to go with our custom widget. Dave's going to talk about themes.
Okay, thanks, Gavin. So now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about theming. So what is theming? Well, theming is you. And in Web AppBuilder, we have CSS classes. And basically what these classes are, they're designed to allow you to create these visual, consistent experience across the app, and basically allows you to use themes. And they're basically classified into four main categories: main, widget, and panel, state, and icon. And you can find them in the GMU.js, CSS, GMU theme.css. But let's dive a little more detailed. So basically there are four major pieces that make a web theme. They are layout. So basically a layout is a list of pre-UI components. It does positions of widgets, panels, and other UI elements, such as on the map, such as the zoom slider, the search box, the panels of where to place, the placements of where to place your widgets, and it also has capabilities to do size of UI elements. And then we have a panel. So panel is a container of the widget's content. It's inside the DOM node. Panels can be different in terms of features. Some can be collapsed, some could be expanded, some can be dragged around. An example of this is the foldable theme. It has two panels, a dockable panel and a foldable panel. And you have the option to choose those. Each theme has its own type of paneling. The next thing is style. Now style defines the look and feel of the app, including, but it's not limited to colors of the header. You can also do sidebar, panels, and other UI elements that exist on there. And then the last piece of it is the controller. Now the controller is in the theme, for instance, is basically it helps it behaves in different themes. And think of it like it's the brain of the whole app. It drives the app navigation. It defines how widgets are opened and closed and communicated, and basically control how the app behaves. Now, when we look at Web AppBuilder from a UI standpoint, the UI is made up of several different components. And at the very least, we inherit from Dojo Digits, and then from there, that inherits Dojo Digits, and then the JavaScript API, and then the Web UI, and then GIMU widgets on there. But to give you a little more detail how this works, so basically going from top to bottom, these are our libraries work in Web AppBuilder. At the very bottom, you have your Dojo Digits, okay? And then we inject the JavaScript API widgets. That inherits everything coming from the Dojo Digits. And then on top of that, the GIMU.css, and then we do some override to give different looks and feels for those inherited things that we're getting from the API and the digits. And then every theme has its own unique styling. So basically, we could take a theme, and then we can override everything that's injected coming from the bottom. Now, remember when I talked about the controller widget? It's different compared to a functional widget, which earlier Gavin was talking about. So when we look at the purpose, a controller widget basically displays how the app's information, it defines the app's behavior, such as interactions, workflows, etc. It decides, does a widget exist within a panel? Does it exist relative to the map? And then when you have your functional widget, it provides one specific functionality to the app, such as the search. And then the folder structure, it's very similar. In the manifest, which we define that exist, makes up the characteristics of our app and Web AppBuilder. The difference between the two is you would declare, for a controller, you would declare that Boolean values are true. For a functional, it's false. Is it a theme widget? Controller widget's going to be true. A functional is going to be false. In panels, always going to be false. And then the functional widget may vary, right? Because you might have a widget that exists in panel or relative to the map. And then others, there's some behaviors that are very similar in that instance. Now let's go ahead and create a theme from scratch. And before I get started, one thing I always like to point out is when we're talking about the controller widget, in most instances, you're going to get by with just doing simple CSS manipulation to kind of skin the theme of what you're looking for. So let's go ahead and get into that. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go into my Web AppBuilder, and I'm going to have a brand new install of Web AppBuilder 2.15. I'm going to create a theme for a 2D app, and let's go ahead and name this theme. And while this is creating everything that makes up this application, it's injecting all the defaults for this particular theme, you're going to notice that in my theme tab, I have all these themes here. And we have this unique one called Dev Summit Theme, coincidentally, which was created for this particular presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and select this theme. Now this theme is basically a copy of this foldable theme with some changes. I went in there and I ripped out all the multiple layouts. I ripped out some of the default styles, and I kind of skinned it just for this particular presentation. So with the theme itself, you're going to see that it's basically, it looks like the foldable. This default gray background, you have these widgets, you have this header in here with this hover. And basically what I want to do is show you how to apply some simple CSS to change the look and feel of this particular application. So the first thing that we're going to do this is we're going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code, and we're going to browse to this default theme folder in our client STEM app under themes. And basically what I'm going to go into is we're going to just, for demonstration purposes, is just style the default theme, which is that gray one we're looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my style.css, which you can see is blank. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to override some CSS. So we're going to go ahead and apply some code snippets to basically do some overrides here. So first, we're going to go ahead and get rid of the gray background, and we're going to give the GMU main background a background color of white, okay? And also what we want to do is we want to change the title of the background to this little subtle dark gray here. So I like to format my code comments, so bear with me here. So if I go ahead and Control S to save, I'm going to go back into my browser here. And since I'm working in the builder mode, what I do, just this is for demonstration purposes, most likely you wouldn't do this, but I'm going to select another theme, hit save, and then I'm going to go back to my other theme so it changes the state of the application. So now you can see I've inherited this white background, and you can see now my icons are hidden. But don't worry, we're going to fix that because we're going to skin this theme to change the look and feel of that. So let's go back into Visual Studio Code, and we're going to override some of the default widgets that are on the map. So we're going to override the location, and we're going to override the zoom slider here. And basically we're going to say my location, the zoom slider, all these widgets that are on the map, we're going to change the background color to this blue here, and then we're going to give it opacity of 9. So we'll hit Control Save here. We'll go back into our application. We'll choose another theme here and hit Save so it inherits a new state. Now you can see this has changed here. One thing I want to do is I don't like this icon here. It's inheriting from our org. So let me go back to my theme. All right, so here you can see the theme's coming alive. We're changing the styling characteristics here. So if we go back into our theme here, the next thing I want to do is I want to override the widget header here. I want to change the styling of this button here to give it a more, what I would say, material design where it's more rounded. In this particular instance, I want to move this border here. So, and then I want to override some paneling stuff in the CSS. So what I'm going to do is import some snippets to make this happen. So here we go. Let me just highlight this real quick, and I'll tell you what's happening here because I just like to format this code. Don't worry, this is just all simple CSS to make this widget header override. So if I get to the top of this, we'll go through this real quick. So let me just format this code here. So basically what we're doing here is we're grabbing the widget header controller, we're getting rid of the box shadow, we're doing a border bottom 3 pixels at this color to match our other color. For the icon node here, we're going to have the same background color, the height's going to be 30 pixels, and then we're going to define some margin on here where we want it placed in there. And then for the image itself that's going to house the selection of the widget inside the header controller, we're going to make sure that's at 14 pixels. And then we want to apply some state selection. So when the user hovers over and selects something, it's going to match our theme. So that background color is going to go to blue. And then for anything that's considered into a header and it's going to be inside a drop down, we're going to push this to a triangle, and we're going to change this header controller. So if you're going to group widgets together, and this is the same here, that's going to equal 14 pixels to make sure it matches all other theming characteristics up above. And then for the visited links, this will be this default of this light gray here. And then more icon cover, the background will be this 323232, that's basically matching ours. As we continue down here, these are just other areas. And then for the pop-up itself, we want to make sure the pop-up matches our theme. So basically we're just doing some overrides here on close and inner. And then here, what we're doing is if the pop-up's selected, we're changing the background color. And then on the widget screen panel, so when the user clicks a panel, we want that panel to align the same and inherit the same color theming of our new theme, which is this dev one. It's going to match, it's going to take that foldable panel title and the title panel, and it's going to give it that background color here. And then basically any pop-up that we get for the title pane in the pop-up, it's going to inherit that background color to match our theme. Okay, so now what we want to do is let's go ahead and hit Control Save. And now what I want to do is now that we have changed this, let me select a new theme here. And let's go back to our Dev Summit theme. You're going to see that this is all changed here. We have this border here, this three pixels. I want to change the look and feel of this particular widget that's inside this header controller. Right now we have just the default font. We have a default state over when we hover over the search, and then we have this rounded radius edge here. Okay, I want to blend this more into this header controller because I think it would look better if I don't have these borders, and I want to change the text to let's match the blue theme, for instance. So if I go back into my Visual Studio Code here, the last step to make this happen is I'm going to go ahead and import this GMU widget search here. And basically what we're going to do here is override the search, ArcGIS search, which is the widget, right? So which is part of the GMU widget search. We're going to override the search button. We're going to define a padding of 6 pixels. We don't want a border here. And then with the search button, hover, and on focus, we're going to give it a white background color. We're going to do background color of white, because right now it's gray. And then the color over will be that blue, okay? And then for when users type in the input of the search widget, we want to give it a color of this blue color to match our theme. The font size is going to be 14 pix, and then we want a border of none. So let's go ahead and hit save. And we're going to go back into our theme here, and let's go ahead and save here and select. So now as you can see, we got rid of our border here, and if I type, it inherits a blue font. If I do a hover, right, it's blue here to match that. You could argue we could probably change the clear search too, but you could see the state has changed here. So that's a simple way of what majority of our customers are doing as far as overriding the themes. You can do some simple CSS modifications to really change the look and feel of your theme. So if I was ready, I could save this and then launch it. And then I could, if I wanted to, I can have other applications use that as part of my org. If I hit saved, and I can export that as a template and then publish as a template, and then any new applications that are built within Web AppBuilder can take advantage of using my theme. The only caveat is that theme is going to be hosted on some web server that your org can get that template, and then it references all the JSON that makes up that theme, and then anyone can use it from there. If I go export template here, you can define what parameters are acceptable as far as what you want configurable parameters for that. And if I export to my organization, you can say, okay, this is my Dev Summit 20 theme. You give it a tag here. And then you could tag some descriptions. You could save it to a theme folder and hit OK. And then now you could see that it doesn't seem you have permission to share the template. That's something you got to get as part of your org. But basically, you have the correct permissions. You put that in something like the gallery. Your users can take advantage of that template. Okay. So let's go back into my presentation here. Okay. So we created the theme. So now let's talk about community. Because let's face it, we need resources to make sure we're successful. And why not leverage the community at hand that we have as part of Web AppBuilder? It's one of the most popular communities we have. And if you're looking for help, you can find information not only in the online help documentation, but also in the Developer Edition help doc. And I think more importantly is the Web AppBuilder community. People are very generous in answering questions pretty quickly, and our team monitors as well. And we're also going to be providing the slides and code from this presentation, from the theme that I created, but also from the custom widget that Gavin created in this URL here. And other resources that are really helpful is our solution team creates widgets that are specific towards certain verticals, and they publish those as open source. And then we have a list of widgets on Esri GitHub for custom widgets. And this example widgets and theme shown today, we'll need to update this slide here. So this is on the previous slide. So let's fix that real quick. So I'm going to exit out here. All right. And we'll do this over again. Hit save. Okay, so let's talk about other online resources. Well, our Esri Solutions widget team, they publish widgets that are developed for specific verticals that they're solving in the industry. They have those as open source. You could find those there. And then we have a list of widgets as part of this repo here that are there to help you get started. And with that, Gavin and I would like to conclude and say thank you for taking part of this presentation, and hopefully you've learned something new. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on the community, and we'll certainly answer those for you. Take care. Bye.